Welcome into SportsSource.tv in our overtime segment today. We appreciate you joining us. I am joined on set by Chuck Cavaleris, Ryan Callahan, and Bob Hodge. This segment is brought to you by our folks at Blue Smoke Cigar. Membership in their private little club down there gets you your own personal locker space, so you can keep your cigars, you can keep your booze, whatever you like in there. You also get 15% off Blue Smoke's elite selection of fine cigars. They got boutique cigars that are just tremendous. Now, those are available to the public, obviously, but the membership in the club gets you 15% off. 10% off, get a discount at McScrooge's Wine and Liquor, which you can then buy and take over to Blue Smoke, put it in your personal locker. You also get access to HD TVs, lounge area, card tables, leather seating, golf simulators. I think you even get you can take a day in their conference room if you need to set that up. Blue Smoke Cigar, if you're a cigar aficionado, and I ordered a box of cool cigars this week, as a matter of fact, if you're a cigar person, get down to Blue Smoke Cigar. You're really going to appreciate it, really going to like it out in West Knoxville. Okay, guys, ESPN reported this week that since the college football playoff began 4 years ago, 13 of the 16 teams that made the field averaged a 15th ranked class or higher in ESPN's recruiting rankings for the 4 years prior to their run. Everybody follow that?
Yes.
So 4 years prior to their run, they were averaging a top 15 finish according to ESPN's recruiting rankings. All right. Tennessee, according to this ESPN thing, is in this list. Here are the teams: Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State, USC, Clemson, Auburn, Texas, Oklahoma, Penn State, LSU, and Tennessee are the teams that best fit the scenario to make it to this year's college football playoff, because they averaged a top 15 signing class by ESPN the last 4 years. It seems to me that they might be overlooking something there. You had these really good recruiting classes, but there's a giant BUT ...
Yeah.
It would seem that you've had a little bit of
Attrition.
attrition, disappearance. Thoughts on the fact that ESPN has Tennessee as one of the 12 most likely playoff contenders this year? You're in recruiting, Ryan. I think you guys at GoVols 24/7 did something with your 24/7 rankings on the last 4 years, I believe. But your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and they still ranked, as we showed in that story, among the top 5 teams in the SEC when you look at average recruiting rankings over the last 4 years. But that doesn't tell the whole story. As you said, you've had attrition from the roster. You've had guys who, frankly, just haven't panned out. You've had some guys who haven't been developed properly. When all those things add up, that's how you get to 4-8. I mean, there were clearly coaching issues on last year's team, but you don't get to 4-8 just by bad luck and some bad coaching decisions. That's a team that's lacking talent in some areas, or just needs to upgrade its talent in some areas. I don't see a playoff berth being in the discussion, but I guess that formula is there for a reason, and maybe with a first-year head coach, Tennessee can surprise some people a little bit, but that's still a stretch.
Yeah.
He's got the billows blowing the fires of anticipation.
Boy.
The billows.
Chuck,
Well,
how much money are you putting on the Vols to make the playoffs this year?
Well, wouldn't you say at least 100 to 1 against, if not higher, as high as you could go? You got to delve into the numbers a little bit. You got to see what's there. You got to go through for each recruit that's in that. Give me a paragraph or a sentence about how that played out.
Or even if they're still, just how about this?
Yeah.
Go through and cross out the guys who aren't here anymore.
Yeah.
That's another simple
and
exercise.
Here's another thing. Has anybody gone from 4-8 to the BCS Final Four? No, not that I'm aware of. So that would be history
somebody's
in
going to do
itself.
it eventually.
Eventually.
No, go back and just look at what Tennessee's got right now. And at what position do you say, yes, this position for the University of Tennessee could be competitive with the best teams in the country?
But they're all going to be coached up this year by the new staff.
They can coach them way up
SEC's
based on
wide
what I saw
open.
last year.
I've made that point. Not only are they not ready to compete at that level, at what position group can you look at it and say that they're even above average by SEC standards?
And to take it one more step, it also means that you're going to win the East, correct? Pretty much.
Yep.
And
You would
you're
think.
not only are you going to beat Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Missouri, whoever, then you're also going to go to the SEC championship game. You're going to win that, most likely.
Well, you could have one. You could do the Alabama thing, have one loss, not go to the championship.
Yeah.
game. But I'm guessing
Yeah.
Tennessee isn't going to
Tennessee's
go 11-1.
got one position where I think you could possibly be above average. That's running back. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's such an individual. If one of these guys catches fire, you could be better. But other than that, no, I don't see anywhere where Tennessee's going to be competitive at that level. And you made the point. I mean, cross the guys off and let's see where Tennessee ranks as recruiting.
Yeah, I mean,
just simply, not the ones that hadn't panned out, the ones that are still on the team and just not as good, just take the ones off.
Right. So if we did that for all 12 of these teams, they've all got guys that didn't pan out, guys that aren't on the roster anymore, guys that got hurt. Everybody's got attrition. But I'm going to guess that Tennessee's list of signees, remaining signees, is going to be shorter than anybody else out of that list. I bet it would be shorter than anybody else there. And we're talking about positions. The bigger concern for me is 3 most important areas in terms of winning are just pure question mark for Tennessee. Defensive line. What kind of depth you got? Offensive line. What kind of depth you got?
Forget depth. What do you got?
And then you got quarterback. Okay, you got nothing proven there either. So you better be good in the trenches and at quarterback. I don't have any clue
Use
they're going to be good in
ESPN's
any of those
formula,
areas.
though, and you are good at quarterback. If you just use their formula, because Garantano was a very highly sought-after quarterback. So if you just look at what ESPN
And Dormady
uses,
was a signee too, so Dormady would still be on their list.
And on the offensive line, you got Drew Richmond, Trey Smith. There's some highly ranked guys there. So I
Khalil
get
McKenzie is on their list
Right,
in terms of
and
he
he's
would
out
still
there.
count.
Exactly.
And it's a team that just lost 3 of its best players to the NFL draft, including McKenzie, John Kelly, Rashawn Golden. They're gone. They weren't even that highly ranked, and they were some of Tennessee's best
would
players.
the Bates kid be on that list somewhere? Because
Yes.
he was a very highly sought-after prospect.
Top 100 player.
I just, it is an interesting formula, and Tennessee is the one you look at that immediately jumps out and says, which one of these do not fit?
It's a good guideline because you have to have talent to be in the discussion for
Right.
the playoff, and you have to be a proven winner in a big conference. Tennessee is one of those things, has some talent on paper, doesn't have the other thing. It hasn't been winning at a high enough level. They're clearly an outlier for this formula.
I forget the other. I think Oregon, Michigan State, and Washington were the other 3 that get in there. Washington's got one of the best coaches in college football. Michigan State's got one of the best coaches in college football, and also it's not like they recruit poorly at Michigan State.
Yeah.
It's not like they're terrible. And Oregon recruits pretty well too. So they might not have averaged top 15, but they're pretty good, and they run a funky system as well. Let me ask you this though, and we'll discuss this. The expectations by the time we hit August, you're going to hear they could go 8-4.
9-3.
You've already heard 8 wins. Didn't you say you had a conversation the other day with one of your roller coaster friends who's on the 8?
8 wins. No reason you can't get to 8.
All right. How realistic is it going to be this year? I mean, this kind of stuff shapes opinion. When you see something out there, it impacts opinion. Somebody somewhere is going to be swayed by it. So it's not like this is just meaningless. It has some impact on some people. Where do you think the expectations are going to be this first year? Do you think they're going to be fair? Do you think they're going to be
No, I don't
realistic?
think they're going to be fair. No, I don't think they're going to be realistic because I think fair expectations, and obviously you all can agree, fair expectations are 6-6, which would be a 2-game improvement over last year, which means that you've beaten somebody that you probably didn't beat a year earlier. And so I think 6-6 is a fair expectation. I think Tennessee may struggle mightily to get to that. Because
And you can also think, how many games would you even be favored in? I mean, you're going to have to do something special.
You've got
to pull-
3.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
much more than 6. I mean, that you're legitimately 3. You're going to be, maybe favored. 3 is going to be pretty close. Kind of like we talked about last year.
Yeah.
You needed to beat Kentucky. That was those games that you need to. I agreed with Bob. I said 6-6 was what I was thinking, and I think that would be a pretty good start.
I think it would be. If 6-6 get into a bowl game, I think that's a pretty good year.
Yeah.
and have a chance
Because
to go 7-6.
I think 5-7 is very realistic.
And
I think 5-7 may be more realistic than 6-6.
Oh, and I agree with that. But I don't think 6-6 is a bad expectation.
I'm with you. 6-6, 5-7 is a realistic expectation for this team. I think people will talk themselves into thinking 7-5 at least going into the
8-4.
season, and
Well, remember-
maybe some 8-4, and that's.
Last year, how many times did we hear, I believe we're going to surprise some people this year.
you hear it
We're
every
better-
year.
Yeah, we're better than what they think.
It was
And
because
don't
of that
forget, You're
talent.
going to start the season, what, a 10-point underdog to West Virginia, correct?
Yep.
Was it 10 or 8?
Well, I've
It's
seen
still,
10. Yeah.
It's still a bunch.
Yeah, still a bunch. So, I mean, it's probably not going to get a whole lot better after that.
Well, and as we discussed a few weeks ago, you're probably going to be underdog to South Carolina, depending on if they play the way they did last year. We don't know that they will, but if they've got a winning record and you're struggling to be 6-6, they're probably going to be favored.
Who do you play in the SEC that you will be favored?
Well,
to
here's
beat?
the funny thing:
Kentucky?
of the 12 teams that they have going to the playoffs, 3 of them, Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia, are on your schedule next year.
Yeah.
And they haven't
So
had the
you
attrition you've had. So,
So
theirs
you
is
control
legit.
your own destiny.
Yes, you control your own destiny. So,
Everybody controls their own destiny.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I wanted to throw that out there because there's a pretty obvious hole. You're right. Good formula, makes sense. But like any formula, you have to dig into it a little bit. Why?
Why?
Why? And the why here is, okay, if you've got this talent, that's tremendous, but do you have that talent on your team today? Is it still there? And the answer there is no, it's not.
And there are
And it
some
wasn't developed.
and there are some talented players who maybe could see a jump under Jeremy Pruitt, but I just still don't think there's
Not
enough
that
to
many.
work with. No,
No.
not enough to work with.
Well, heck, how many of these teams on this list, Jeremy Pruitt said last week, probably going to be 75 to 77 on the scholarship list.
Mm-hmm.
How many of these 12 teams, how many
Right.
teams are going to wind up in the playoffs? It'd be interesting to go back and look. How many of these playoff teams went in 10 men under the scholarship
And
limit?
see,
I'm going to guess none.
And to go to Ryan's point, let's say they do develop. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say you have guys that make a big jump.
Sure.
You still don't have any depth.
No.
Now what you've got is guys who are competitive in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this guy. I mean, just throw out the name Drew Richmond. Let's say Drew Richmond becomes a really good offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
You still don't have enough offensive linemen.
And
even if he gets
even if
better,
he does-
you still don't have.
Yep.
enough.
And you still have to reverse the trend of all the injuries.
Right.
Yep.
And you're switching to new systems on offense and defense, as we discussed, with first-time play caller on offense, first-time defensive coordinator, and a first-time head coach.
Well, heck, I do think that adds up to 9-3.
You're still underselling it, Bob. ESPN says. All right. Chuck, Ryan, Bob, thank you all very much. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you joining us every week. We will see you on WATE 6 at 11 a.m. next Sunday morning for the Sports Source.